I found this, sir. This paragraph is different in the Japanese version. That is enough.
Before we begin, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. I'm really hoping to break through the magical barrier of 1,000 subscribers. That number holds a special significance for me. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but for me, it's a huge boost of motivation to create my next video. Thank you in advance. I'll give you my salary if you translate this. What? Don't mock me, I'm serious. Let's see. Translate this properly. It says, the proposal guarantees a 20% return on investment in the first year. Incredible. That's correct. I'll give you my salary if you translate. What? Seriously? Yes. If you translate it, it's all yours. All right. You present it to confirm that the assets have been transferred to the designated account in compliance with the agreed-upon terms. What? How did you know? Don't underestimate me. I'll give you my salary if you translate this. The millionaire boss laughed, but the cleaning lady caught him. I'll give you my salary if you translate this. I'll give you my entire month's salary if you translate this. It's a trick. Ricardo Vega's booming laughter bounced off the windows of the 40th floor and returned like a slap. 12 executives around the mahogany table chuckled with him, some out of fear, others out of habit, none out of amusement. The air conditioning hummed softly. Outside, Mexico City stretched out in shades of gray and blue beneath a midday sky, the Reforma towers slicing the horizon like upright knives. Lucia Herrera stood still, 3 meters from the table, a broom in one hand and a folded rag in the other. She wore the navy blue uniform with an impeccably white apron, her black hair tied in a low ponytail, and on her face, that precise blend of dignity and weariness that only women around 40, carrying the weight of the world, can master. She didn't lower her gaze, nor did she raise it. She held it steady at the edge of the table where Ricardo waved some stapled sheets as if they were a fan. All right, everyone, pay attention, Ricardo said, still chuckling. The Japanese sent this contract last night. It's in English and Japanese. Our official translator is sick, right, Daniela? And this mop lady here keeps staring at me whenever I pass. I think she wants to tell us something, right, Jarrita? Do you want to tell us something? Ricardo, please, someone murmured. No, it's not serious. My whole month's salary, signed. Just translate the first paragraph, go on. He tossed the papers into the air. They fluttered onto the dark carpet with a dry rustle. Daniela Cortez, Ricardo's right-hand woman, smiled with a painted red mouth that always seemed poised to bite. She crossed her legs in her black pantsuit and tapped the table twice with her index fingernail, impatient, amused. Oh, boss, don't be cruel, Daniela said, almost singing. The poor thing just came to clean, not to take an entrance exam. More laughter. One of the executives coughed to hide his amusement. Another covered his mouth with his fist. The scent of freshly brewed coffee, expensive leather chairs, and women's perfume mingled in the dense air that Lucia breathed slowly. Very slowly, so her chest wouldn't betray her. In her head, a voice from 18 years ago echoed. The voice of her father, Don Ernesto. A short, thin man who sold corn on the cob on the corner of a high school in Coyoacán. My daughter, if one day they throw something at your feet to humiliate you, you pick it up with both hands, but you lift your head at the same time. Never one without the other. Lucia felt a knot rise from her stomach to her sternum. Her fingers trembled for a quarter of a second. No one noticed. She did. And beneath that voice, another, even older one, that of her mother, Doña Remedios, the night Lucia won the scholarship to go to Tokyo at the tender age of 18. He who laughs at you, daughter, has already lost and doesn't know it yet. Let him laugh until his laughter runs out. Then you speak. Her mother had died of a heart attack a month before Lucia returned from Japan with her degree. She never saw her graduate. She never saw her in a pantsuit at a UN booth. She never saw her on her knees either. 16 years later, on a white tile floor cleaning up the vomit of a drunk executive at 11 p.m., her chest grew hot, her ears too. It was the same heat that rose whenever one of those men from the 40th floor passed by without seeing her, as if she were just another piece of furniture, or worse, as if she were dirty air. She leaned the broom carefully against the wall, like leaving a sleeping child. She folded the rag and placed it on the leather briefcase of an executive who flinched as if the rag were a tarantula. She walked over to the scattered papers on the carpet. She bent down slowly, picked them up one by one, stood up, and looked Ricardo directly in the eyes for the first time in the 4 months she had worked there. "A month of your salary, Mr. Vega?" she asked in a low but crystal-clear voice. "Are you sure?" The room fell so silent that the hum of a laptop fan could be heard. Ricardo blinked. His smile froze halfway, hanging like a torn curtain. He quickly recomposed himself, threw his head back, and let out another laugh. This one more forced, more hoarse. "Wow, the lady has some backbone. Yes, ma'am. A whole month. 320,000 pesos signed, paid, whatever you want. But you have to translate it straight through, no dictionary, no cell phone. Come on, don't be shy. Or are you backing out?" "I'm not backing out." Daniela stopped smiling. It was subtle. A muscle in the corner of her mouth tensed too much. Her long black eyes, accentuated by eyeliner, sharpened. She reached for her coffee cup and took a sip, never taking her eyes off Lucia over the rim. Lucia arranged the papers. There were 23 pages in total. A bilingual contract, headed in vertical Japanese on the right, a column in English on the left, with the letterhead of Tanaka Industries, offices in Osaka, Yokohama, and Guadalajara. Dated the previous day, a red official seal. Lucia took a deep breath through her nose just once. The air smelled of fresh paper, laser printer ink, and, very faintly, the sweet aroma of Daniela's expensive perfume. A perfume worth 4,000 pesos. The bottle she knew well because she cleaned the vanity where it was kept. She began to read aloud, first in Japanese. "Konoyaku wa Vega Corporacion Kabushiki Gaisha to Tanaka Kogo Kabushiki Gaisha no Aidani." The cadence was clean, the syllables round, the tones exact. A young executive sitting to Ricardo's left slowly opened his mouth. His name was Emilio. He was 28 years old, had an MBA from Tokyo, and had lived in Shibuya for 2 years. He recognized every word. He turned to look at Ricardo, his eyes wide. Ricardo didn't notice. Ricardo was looking at Lucia as if he had just seen a stray dog stand on its hind legs and order a red wine. Lucia finished the first paragraph in Japanese. She didn't stop, switched to English in the left column, and continued with a clean British accent, without hesitation, marking the commas with her voice. "This contract establishes a strategic joint venture between Vega Corporacion and Tanaka Industries for the manufacturing and distribution of automotive components in the North American market, valued at $0 million over a period of 7 fiscal years." Someone coughed. Daniela placed her cup on its saucer with too much force. A small but sharp click sounded. Lucia continued. Page 2. Page 3. She turned the pages with firm fingers, her gaze never lingering on the paper for more than a second per line. She translated on the fly, from Japanese to Spanish, from English to Spanish, stringing together complex ideas, legal terms, intellectual property clauses, definitions of international arbitration. She spoke of New York conventions, of the Vienna Convention, of joint and several liability. Her voice didn't tremble, her hands didn't tremble. Only a muscle beneath her left cheekbone twitched occasionally, a tiny tick that only she felt. Ricardo stopped laughing, straightened in his black leather chair, crossed his arms, uncrossed them, ran his tongue over his upper lip, and looked for Daniela. Daniela was pale beneath her makeup. A greenish hue, almost imperceptible, had risen to her neck. "Wait," Ricardo said, his voice lower than he intended. Wait, stop." Lucia paused mid-sentence, held her breath for 2 seconds, lowered the papers and placed her hands one over the other in front of her white apron. "Yes, Mr. Vega?" "Where from?" Ricardo swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Where do you come from? From the service entrance, sir, as always. An executive let out a nervous chuckle and quickly swallowed it. Ricardo stood up, walked slowly around the table with his hands in his pockets. He approached Lucia until he was 1.5 meters away from her. He was a tall man of 48, with black hair prematurely graying at the temples, a strong jawline, and honey-colored eyes. Handsome, if one could forget how he laughed at people. He smelled of Italian cologne and Cuban cigars. His navy blue tie had a gold pin with the initials RB. "Who are you?" he asked this time without mockery, almost with fear. Lucia felt a strange sensation in her chest. It wasn't pride. It wasn't resentment. It was something older, quieter, more hers. It was the ghost of a woman she had been, a long, long time ago, in another life, when she still wore heels and spoke into headsets in booths, translating for heads of state at G20 summits. That woman had died one October night on a highway in Cuernavaca, and Lucia had buried the heels the next day. She had never taken them out again. She looked at Ricardo, lifted her chin ever so slightly. "I'm the lady who cleans your office, sir. I have for 4 months. "I know that already," Ricardo said. "I'm asking who you were." Lucia smiled. It was a subtle smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that older women give when someone is about to make a very costly mistake. She bent down, picked up her broom, tucked the rag under her arm, and handed Ricardo the 23 pages of the contract with both hands, like presenting an offering or a sentence. "Before I answer you, Mr. Vega," she said very softly, "please review Clause 14, Paragraph 3. The Japanese version says one thing, the English version says another. And the difference, if you sign, will cost your company 210 million pesos." The silence that followed wasn't silence. It was a void. A black hole that swallowed the hum of the air conditioning, the breathing of the executives, the beating of 12 hearts within 12 expensive suits. Ricardo took the papers, his right thumb trembling, and Daniela, from her seat at the table, gripped her coffee cup so hard that the porcelain creaked from within. Clause 14. Ricardo Vega didn't move for a full 7 seconds. Lucia counted them internally, one by one, just as she used to count seconds between the click of a microphone and the moment a head of state began to speak at a summit. 7 seconds in which the most powerful man on the 40th floor stood frozen with 23 pages in his hands, staring at a line of black ink he didn't understand. Clause 14, Paragraph 3, he repeated softly, almost to himself. He searched for the page. His thick, tanned fingers, with a signet ring on his little finger, turned 2 pages. 3. He found the 4th. He stared at the block of Japanese characters on the right, those vertical strokes that to him were just pretty drawings. Then he lowered his gaze to the English, which he could read, albeit with effort, with the slowness of someone who learned the language in a very expensive executive course, but never absorbed it as a child. "Here it says," he began, frowning, "the intellectual property developed jointly shall remain under shared ownership of both parties with rights of commercial exploitation exercised proportionally to capital contribution." Shared ownership, right? Proportional exploitation to investment. What's the problem? Lucia didn't answer. She closed her eyes for barely half a second, her father again from the other side of memory. "When someone doesn't hear you the first time, my daughter, don't repeat louder, repeat more slowly." "Mr. Vega," she said, "may I show you?" She approached the table. The executives leaned back in their chairs as if Lucia were an electric current that could melt their suits. Emilio, the young man with the MBA from Tokyo, straightened up so much that his tie stood stiff. Daniela stopped breathing for 2 seconds. Her long, perfect nails dug into the leather armrest of the chair without her realizing it. Lucia placed her index finger on the block of Japanese characters, a slender finger, with knuckles slightly swollen from scrubbing floors, but clean, with a short, neatly trimmed nail. "I'll read it now, directly, without embellishment. In Japanese, it says this, sir. Jointly developed intellectual property shall pass to Tanaka Industries from the 5th fiscal year, at which point Vega Corporation will cede all commercial exploitation rights in Asia, Europe, and Oceania, retaining only the Mexican market. Silence. A different silence than before, a heavy silence. "Repeat that," Ricardo said, his voice raspy. Lucia repeated, word for word, without changing a comma. "So," Ricardo murmured. "So, the English version says one thing, and the Japanese version says another." "Yes, sir. And which signature is valid?" Lucia turned the last page, placed her finger on a line printed in tiny letters at the end of the contract, almost on the edge, where no one looks unless they know where to search. "This one, sir. In Clause 23, final paragraph, it states that in case of discrepancy between versions, the Japanese version prevails. This is stipulated by Japanese commercial law and accepted by bilateral agreement with Mexico since 2002. A sharp noise cut through the silence. It was Daniela's cup. It slipped half an inch from her hand and hit the saucer. Coffee spilled onto the leather placemat. No one looked at her. Everyone was looking at Ricardo. Ricardo Vega, 48 years old, owner of 3 factories, 4 buildings in Polanco, a ranch in Valle de Bravo, 2 yachts, and a collection of Swiss watches that cost him more than the entire block where Lucia lived in Iztapalapa. Ricardo Vega turned pale. His eyes sank. He sat down slowly on the edge of the table, not in his chair. He ran his hand down his face, as if he wanted to tear off his skin and put on another. 210 million pesos, he whispered. 210, sir, in direct losses for the first year. In accumulated loss, 7 years, it would exceed 100 million, and I would lose the Asian market for my auto parts forever." "No way," someone in the back muttered very softly. Ricardo looked up, looked at Lucia. He truly looked at her, for the first time in 4 months and for the first time in his life in that way. Without a smile, without mockery, without the filter of superiority, with which Ricardo Vega had viewed the world since his father gave him his first workshop at 23. He looked at her as you look at someone who has just pulled you out of the water when you were already drowning. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lucia Herrera." "Lucia," he repeated, as if testing the word in his mouth. "Where did you learn to do this?" She didn't answer. Ricardo waited. The executives waited. Daniela waited with her coffee-stained hand, pale as a sheet of paper. Inside, Lucia felt something that hadn't happened to her in many years. A pulse in her neck, a beat near her collarbone, telling her she was alive, that she was in an important place, that she was about to say something that could change her life. She had felt it at 22, in a booth when she translated for a minister for the first time. She had felt it at 28, when her contract with the foreign ministry was signed. She had felt it at 34, the morning she gave birth to Sophia. And then, never again. After that October night, after Cuernavaca, after the wet highway, the pulse had gone out as if her body had decided it wasn't worth beating so hard anymore. Now it was back, and Lucia was afraid. She looked at the marble floor, saw her blurred reflection in the polished sheen. She saw a woman in a white apron standing in the middle of a room full of suits. And for a brief second, a second that no one had time to notice, she also saw, superimposed on the reflection, the silhouette of the other Lucia, the one from before, the one who no longer existed, the one who wore stilettos and had interpreter headphones hanging from her neck. She closed her eyes, then opened them. The other Lucia was gone again. She clasped her hands in front of her apron, lowered her gaze to the floor for a second, then raised it again. "I'm on work hours, Mr. Vega. I still have 2 offices on the 38th floor and the bathrooms on the 40th. If you'll excuse me." She turned slowly, picked up her broom, and walked to the frosted glass door, with a calm pace, not fast, not slow. The low heels of her synthetic leather shoes made a soft click against the polished floor. Before leaving, she stopped, didn't turn all the way around, just rotated her head a quarter turn. "Mr. Vega, yes. The salary you offered me was a joke, wasn't it?" Ricardo swallowed. Well, yes, she said. I don't accept joke salaries. Not from you or anyone else. Have a good day. And she left. The door closed with a magnetic click. The aroma of spilled coffee hung suspended in the air. No one moved for almost a full minute, a minute during which Ricardo Vega stared at the closed door as if expecting it to open again and the woman with the broom to come back in and tell him it had all been a joke. It didn't open again. Ricardo stood up, walked around the table to his chair, and sank into it. He placed the 23 pages of the contract on the desk very carefully, as if they were a bomb that had miraculously been diffused. He loosened his tie, ran his hand over his face again. "Emilio," he said, "come here." Emilio jumped up, walked around the table, and stood beside his boss. "You studied in Tokyo, didn't you?" "Yes, sir, for 4 years." "Read Clause 14, Paragraph 3, the Japanese version. Read it to me right now." Emilio took the pages, found the page, lowered his gaze. His lips moved silently for 20 seconds. When he looked up, his face was white. "Sir, she's right. Word for word, it's a trap contract." Ricardo closed his eyes, leaned back against the seat, and took a deep breath through his nose. When he opened his eyes again, they were red, not from tears but from contained rage. Rage at himself, rage at Daniela, rage at the whole world that had almost taken away in one afternoon what he had built in 30 years. "Daniela," he said without looking at her. "Yes, boss?" Her voice came out an octave higher than usual. "You brought me this contract last night. You told me it was already reviewed. You told me to sign today before 5. "Yes, boss, but shut up." Ricardo stood up. He walked to the picture window. He stood watching the city, the towers, the cars, the avenue. 320 meters below, people walked like ants, and he felt he himself was an ant about to be crushed by his own arrogance. "Emilio," he said without turning, "go find Mrs. Herrera. Not tomorrow, now. Bring her back to my office and offer her whatever she asks for. Salary, contract, her own office, anything. But bring her back?" "Yes, sir." Emilio ran out. Daniela remained seated with her mouth open, her dark eyes shining with something that was no longer fear, but calculation. Cold calculation. She had been caught. Ricardo had half caught her. He didn't know yet that she was the main accomplice in the fraud, but he was starting to smell it, and she had to act fast. She looked at Lucia through the frosted glass of the door. The blurred silhouette of a woman with a broom receded down the hallway towards the elevators. Daniela opened her purse, took out her cell phone, and typed a short, 3-word message to a saved, nameless number. "We have a problem." The woman who had been the elevator smelled of floor wax and old secretary perfume. Lucia leaned against the mirrored wall and closed her eyes. 40 floors down, 40 seconds for the world to settle back into her head. Her hands were trembling. Now they could tremble. No one was watching her. In the elevator mirror, a piece of the old Lucia appeared without warning. The one who at 19 had boarded a plane alone for the first time, with a Japanese government scholarship in her backpack and her heart leaping like a runaway horse. The one who had lived for 2 years in a boarding house in Kyoto, where Mrs. Yamamoto taught her to fold cloth napkins and to say mimasen with the exact inclination. The one who returned to Mexico at 21 with 2 degrees and Japanese ingrained in her bones. The one who at 23 entered the Secretariat of Foreign Affairs. The one who at 28 married Andres Mendoza, a civil engineer, a good man, a truly good man. Not one of those who feigned goodness to catch women. The one who at 34 had Sophia, a chubby baby with spiky hair who laughed before crying when she was taken out of her womb. And the one who at 38 on an October night on the Mexico-Cuernavaca highway, with the rain falling like silver walls, had survived a truck that crossed into the oncoming lane and took the car where Andres and Sophia, asleep in the back seat, were. Andres died instantly. Sophia died 2 days later in the hospital without opening her eyes. Lucia survived, with 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a black hole in her chest that no surgery could close. For the first few months, she didn't speak. Couldn't. For the next few months, she spoke only to her pillow. The second year, she started cleaning her own house obsessively until the tiles shone like mirrors. Then her neighbor's house, for free, so as not to charge for something that calmed her hands. Then an office, charging a fee, because Andres's money had run out, and the insurance company only sent her lawsuits. Then 2 offices, then 8. Then this building, under renovation, where no one knew that the broom-wielding woman had translated for presidents. The scholarship, the planes, the booths, the microphones, all of that she buried, not forgot, buried, which is different. And now, for the first time in 16 years, someone had just unearthed a tiny piece and placed it on the mahogany desk on the 40th floor. The elevator chimed. Ding! Door opening, floor 38. Lucia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and stepped out. Mrs. Lucia! Mrs. Lucia, wait! Emilio was running down the hallway. 2 buttons had come undone from his jacket. His tie was askew. Ma'am, Mr. Vega wants to speak with you. He's asking you to please go up to his office. It's urgent. Lucia tightened her grip on the broom. Young man, she said respectfully, I have work, and I imagine you do too. Ma'am, please. Mr. Vega will fire me if I don't get you upstairs. I don't fire anyone, young man. That's your boss. Tell him that if he's so eager to speak with me, I'm here. Cleaning the bathroom on the 38th floor. He can come down. Emilio opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, took out his cell phone, dialed, spoke in a low voice for 20 seconds, hung up. He says he's coming down. Lucia let out a sigh and went into the ladies' room on the 38th floor. She took out the spray bottle, the rag, the glass cleaner. She began to spray. The smell of artificial lemon filled her nostrils. In the mirror, among the drops, she looked tired. She looked 48 years old. She looked like what she was. A woman who had lost too much and wasn't going to ask anyone for anything. 2 minutes later, the bathroom door opened. Ricardo Vega entered as if it were any hallway. Mr. Vega, this is the women's restroom. I know, he said. No one's here. I locked the door from the outside. I need 3 minutes. Lucia placed the spray bottle on the sink, crossed her arms, and looked him in the eye. Ricardo looked different from up close. Less tall, less powerful. A man. A man with fear. Speak, Lucia said. Mrs. Herrera, he paused, swallowed, he nodded. Mrs. Herrera, I apologize for what happened upstairs. Apology accepted. May I leave now? No, not yet. I want to offer you a job. I already have a job. A real job, with your degree, with your experience. I don't know who you are. You haven't told me, but I'm not stupid either. Someone who translates like that is no ordinary person. I'll pay whatever she asks, salary, benefits, her own office. I need her to translate contracts, correspondence with Asia, negotiations. Name your price. Lucia shook her head slowly. No, Mr. Vega, why not? Because I've already buried that life. And because the dead shouldn't be dug up for money? Ricardo fell silent. He looked at her. He didn't fully understand, but he understood something. He lowered his head, shoved his hands into his pockets. I apologize about the salary, about the joke. I already said it. Apologies accepted. But I promised you a month's salary, and you translated. I'll send it to you. No, sir. It's only fair. What would have been fair, sir, is not to have offered it as a joke. What is offered in jest should not be demanded as truth. I am not a beggar. Ricardo looked up, studying her for a long moment. Lucia met his gaze. Something stirred within her that she couldn't name. It wasn't attraction, it was something else. It was the silent recognition between 2 people who had lost great things. Ricardo, too, had buried people. It was etched in the wrinkles around his eyes. As you wish, Mrs. Herrera, but I have a favor to ask. Tell me if you ever change your mind. If one day you want to use what you know again, look for me. The door is open. Thank you, sir. Ricardo left. Lucia stood frozen in front of the mirror, the spray bottle dangling from her hand. She took a deep breath. She sprayed again. 10 minutes later, when she finished her bath and stepped into the hallway, Daniela was waiting for her. She stood by the elevator, arms crossed, a faint smile playing on her lips. She had changed. Now she wore a red blazer and a tight black skirt. The coffee no longer stained her hands, but those dark eyes still held a certain murkiness. "Mrs. Herrera," Daniela said, her voice a poisoned honey. "Can we talk for a moment?" "I'm working." "Oh, it won't take long. Just 5 minutes here in the little sitting room." She gently tugged Lucia's elbow toward an adjacent lounge where clients sometimes waited. She sat down, crossed her legs, and gestured to the armchair opposite. Lucia didn't sit. She remained standing, broom in hand. "As you wish," Daniela said with a smile. "Look, ma'am, what you did upstairs was spectacular. Truly, I congratulate you. But I'm going to tell you something, woman to woman." "Yes, please." "This building is mine. Not on paper, mind you, but it's mine. I decide who works here, who doesn't, who goes up, who comes down. And you, ma'am, you've stepped into a place today where you shouldn't have. I did my job. Your job is to clean, not to translate, not to correct contracts, not to embarrass anyone in meetings. That is not your job. Mr. Vega asked me to translate. Mr. Vega is forgive me for saying it. I say this with affection. He's someone who needs me to look after his business, and I've been looking after it for 12 years. 12. Do you know how long you've been here? 4 months. 4 months. There you have it." Daniela stood up, moved closer, stopping about a foot away from Lucia. Her mouth was visible up close. She wore expensive, perfect matte red lipstick, and the corners of her lips curved upward in a smile that held no warmth. "I'm going to do you a favor, Mrs. Herrera. I'm going to give you 2 options." "Tell me." 1. Tomorrow, you don't come to work. You resign. I'll give you 3 months' salary under the table. You go home. Everyone's happy. And 2, Daniela smiled wider. Her dark eyes narrowed. She took another step closer. Her breath smelled of mint and cigarette smoke. "And 2, ma'am, is that you stay. And in 2 weeks, 3 at the most, I'll make sure you leave this building dragging yourself out. Without a job, without references, with nothing. And I swear on my mother's life, I will bury you so deep that your grandchildren will be born owing me money." She stepped back. She smiled again, this time broadly, whitely, perfectly. "Think about it. I'll give you until tomorrow morning." "Fine." She turned, walked toward the elevator in those 12-centimeter heels that sounded like hammer blows against the floor. She stepped into the elevator. Just before the door closed, she turned back. "Oh, and ma'am, one more thing." "Yes?" "I don't play games. I never play games. Ask the last 3 people who crossed me. Oh, wait, you can't. They're no longer around to tell the tale." The door closed. Lucia stood in the middle of the hallway, alone with the broom in her hand. The 38th floor corridor was empty at that hour. Amber emergency lights began to flicker on one after another on the ceilings, and through the glass of the closed offices, the orange reflection of the sunset seeped in. It smelled of old paper, industrial carpet, and that peculiar scent that air conditioners leave when they've been working all day. In the distance, the hum of a late-night printer could be heard. Nothing else. Lucia took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. Each breath settled a piece of her heart that Daniela had dislodged. In her mind, her mother's voice echoed again, the one that only appeared when she truly needed it. "Daughter, when someone bares their teeth at you, it's because they know you have yours too." And Lucia smiled. She smiled without enthusiasm. She smiled with the corner of her mouth, but she smiled. It had been 16 years since she'd bared her teeth at anyone. It was about time. And for the first time in 16 years, she felt something she knew very well but had forgotten existed. And for the first time in 16 years, she felt something she knew very well but had forgotten existed. She felt she was no longer afraid of losing, because when one has already lost a husband and a daughter, Mrs. Daniela, there is nothing left to lose. And the woman who is no longer afraid of losing is the most dangerous woman in the world. The trap. The clock read 6:40 in the morning when Lucia swiped her magnetic card through the building's turnstile. The green light illuminated, and she passed through. She wore her freshly ironed uniform, her hair still damp from her shower, and in her backpack a container with leftover rice and refried beans from dinner. Outside, Mexico City smelled of sweetbread and truck diesel. Inside the building, it smelled of freshly mopped floors and imported coffee. She took the elevator. Floor 40. Again. When the doors opened, Daniela Cortez was waiting for her, flanked by a security guard. "Good morning, Mrs. Herrera." Lucia stopped dead. The guard was a young man of about 30, uniformed, a radio on his shoulder, and a look of profound discomfort. His name was Chava. Lucia knew him because he always gave her a gelatin when she passed through the lobby. "Good morning, Mrs. Cortez. Good morning, Chava." "Mrs. Herrera, I need you to accompany us," Daniela said. Her voice the same poisoned honey as always. "We need to review some things." "What things?" "I'll explain in a moment. Come in." They led her to a small, windowless room at the end of the corridor. A small room that Lucia had cleaned countless times and where she had never seen anyone enter. Inside, on a table, was her backpack. The backpack she had left in the staff room locker just 30 seconds ago, open, emptied, its contents scattered on the table. The container of beans, her toothbrush, her wallet, her INE identification card, a wooden rosary that had belonged to her mother, and a small black velvet box that Lucia had never seen before. "What is this?" Lucia asked, her voice barely a whisper. "That's what we want to ask you," Daniela said. She approached the table, picked up the box with her fingertips, a theatrical delicacy as if presenting evidence to a jury. She removed the lid. Inside, nestled on red satin, gleamed a watch, a rose gold Patek Philippe. A watch Lucia had seen many times on Mr. Vega's wrist. Her blood ran cold. "I don't know what that is," Lucia said. "I've never seen that box before." "It was in your backpack, ma'am. I didn't put it there." "Your backpack was in your locker. Your locker has your personal lock with your key. No one else has that key." "I didn't," Hava said, not looking at her. "Can you confirm that we opened the locker with Mrs. Herrera's key?" "Yes, Mrs. Cortez," Hava said, looking at the floor. "She left the backpack. She locked it. I saw her. Then you asked me to open it because there was a report of theft. We used the master key. There it is," Daniela said. "Report of theft. Mr. Vega was looking for his watch this morning. It wasn't there."
Cameras on the 40th floor show someone entering his office last night at 10:47. The only person with access to that office at that hour is the cleaning staff on duty. "I didn't enter that office last night," Lucia said. "I left at 9. I signed out in the logbook." "The logbook can be signed and then returned." "Hava saw me leave." "Hava was on his break at 9, Daniela said with a smirk. Hava bowed his head lower. Lucia took a single breath. She remembered her mother, her father, Andres, Sofia, all dead, all tucked away in the same secret compartment of her chest. And she remembered something Andres had told her once, during a stupid argument about money, when Sofia was 3 years old. "Lucia, when someone accuses you of something you didn't do, don't cry. Never cry. The one who cries first loses. The one who breathes slowly wins." She breathed slowly. "Mrs. Cortez," she said, "I did not steal that watch." "The evidence says otherwise." "The evidence says what you made it say." Daniela raised an eyebrow. She smiled wider. "Careful with your accusations, Mrs. Herrera. I have a witness here. Security guard, present. Stolen item, present. Suspect's locker, present. Logbook signature, present. All of that is fact. What you're saying are opinions." "Can I speak to Mr. Vega?" "Mr. Vega is busy. Besides, this is an administrative matter. I handle these matters." I want to speak to him. No, then I'll call the police. Daniela's smile faltered for half a second. Then the smile returned, bigger. Go ahead, call. I'll gladly lend you my cell phone, but I'll tell you what will happen. They'll come, they'll see the evidence, they'll take you into custody, they'll investigate you. In a month, 2, 3, you'll be released because poor people always have their charges reduced. But in the meantime, ma'am, you'll be spending Christmas in the East Detention Center. If that's what you want. Lucia didn't answer. Or, Daniela continued softly, we can do this the easy way. You sign your resignation. You confess that you took the watch out of momentary temptation, out of necessity, whatever. We tell Mr. Vega that you've already returned it, that it was a misunderstanding. You go home without a complaint, without jail, without scandal, and without a job. And without a job. Exactly. Lucia looked at the watch on the table, a gleaming object worth 300,000 pesos that didn't belong to her, had never belonged to her, that had appeared in her backpack as flies appear on a corpse, because someone put it there. She looked at Daniela, looked at Chava, looked back at the watch, and at that moment, the door to the small room burst open. Ricardo Vega entered like a storm. Dark gray suit, white shirt, no tie, his hair damp as if he'd just showered at the building's gym.
Behind him came Emilio, the MBA student, a folder under his arm and an urgent look on his face. What's going on here? Ricardo asked. Daniela straightened up, her expression changing in an instant, her smile adjusting, her shoulders softening, her voice turning professional. Boss, good morning. I was just handling a little problem. We found your Patek in Mrs. Herrera's backpack. I was about to call you as soon as I finished. Ricardo looked at the table, saw the watch, saw the box, saw the emptied backpack, saw Lucia standing beside it, calm, hands at her apron. His jaw tightened. Chava, he said, leave. Yes, sir. Chava hurried out, closing the door. Daniela? Yes, boss? You're telling me Mrs. Herrera broke into my office last night to steal my watch? That's what the cameras in the logbook say, boss. Show me the cameras. The recording is on the server. I'll show it to you on my laptop right now. Right away. Yes, boss. I'll go get the laptop. Daniela's gone. Ricardo stood frozen in front of the table. He looked at Lucia. Lucia looked at him. Neither spoke for 15 seconds. The little room was cramped, bone-white walls, a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, a metal table, 2 plastic chairs. It smelled of paper and a faint trace of sweet perfume Daniela had left hanging in the air. On the far wall, a calendar from last year displayed a photo of a Cancun beach, forgotten by someone who no longer even worked there. Lucia's gaze fixed on the backpack. Inside, peeking out of a side pocket, was a photograph. The only photo she carried with her everywhere. Sofia sat on Andres's lap, eating a mango with chili, her hands stained yellow, laughing at something no one would ever know. Ricardo saw it, saw the photo, said nothing, but his shoulders softened. Mrs. Herrera, Ricardo said very quietly, I don't believe you stole this. Thank you, sir, but I need proof to defend you, and right now the evidence is against you.
I know, Emilio. Yes, boss. Show him.
Emilio opened the folder, pulled out a printed paper, an email, and handed it to Ricardo. Ricardo read it, his face souring. Read it aloud, he said, for Mrs. Herrera. Boss, this is sensitive information. Read it. Emilio swallowed, he read. This is an email sent yesterday at 11:30 p.m. from an anonymous account to the CFO of Tanaka Industries in Osaka. It says, I quote, Alert, unauthorized interpreter involved in the review of the Vega contract. We suspect leakage of confidential information. We recommend suspending negotiations until further notice. Signed, Internal Source, Vega Corporation, Silence. Who sent that email? Lucia asked. We don't know, Ricardo said. The account was created last night, used once, then deleted, but it came from this building's Wi-Fi, from the 40th floor, the floor where only you, Daniela, and 3 assistants work. Correct. Mrs. Vega, someone is sabotaging you from within. I know. And that someone just put a 300,000 peso watch in your backpack, Mrs. Herrera. And it wasn't by chance that they did it today. It was because the person who sent that email already knows you're a danger to them. Lucia looked at the watch, then at Ricardo. Her eyes filled with something that wasn't tears, but clarity. Mr. Vega, tell me. Yesterday I told you I wouldn't work for you. Yes? I've changed my mind. Ricardo looked at her, nodded slowly. On one condition? He asked. On one condition, she said. Let the woman who mopped that floor with me 20 minutes ago stay with me. I'll handle her. Done. At that moment, the door opened. Daniela entered with the laptop under her arm and a wide smile. Boss, I have the video, she said. You're going to be impressed. Ricardo looked at her. He smiled barely with the left corner of his mouth. A smile Lucia had never seen on him, and that Daniela apparently hadn't either. It was the smile of a hunter who just realized the prey walked right into the trap. Let's see, Ricardo said. Show us, Daniela. Show us that video in full detail, the Japanese branch. Daniela opened the laptop on the metal table. She opened it with the confidence of someone about to flip a coin and knowing exactly which side it would land on. She moved the touchpad, opened a folder, and put a video on full screen. The hallway of the 40th floor was visible. Night recording with that greenish light of infrared cameras. Digital clock in the corner, 10:47 p.m. A figure entered walking down the hall. Cleaning uniform, low ponytail, broom in hand, average height. She entered Ricardo's office. She exited 3 minutes later. She walked down the hall towards the elevators. There, Daniela said, crossing her arms. It's you, Mrs. Herrera. With all due respect, Ricardo moved closer, rested both elbows on the table, leaned down until his nose almost touched the screen. He asked Daniela to rewind the video, to put it in slow motion. Daniela obeyed. Her smile remained fixed, a little stiff. Ricardo pointed his finger at the screen, at the left wrist of the figure in the video. Emilio, tell me, sir, what do you see on this wrist? Emilio leaned closer, looked. A watch, sir. What kind of watch? Digital, sporty, large. Mrs. Herrera is wearing a watch today, Ricardo said without looking at Lucia. Can you show it to us, please? Lucia lifted her left sleeve. She wore a small black plastic Casio, a woman's watch her mother had given her 20 years ago. That's not the watch from the video, Ricardo said. The one in the video is a large men's watch, and the person in the video is taller than Mrs. Herrera, slightly, maybe 5 centimeters. And she walks differently. Mrs. Herrera walks with her toes pointing outward. The one in the video points inward. Details, Daniela. Details kill. Daniela opened her mouth, then closed it. Boss, it's hard to see in infrared. Emilio, go to security. Bring me the complete list of personnel from last night's night shift. All uniformed, external company, everyone. And bring me the full recording, not just this snippet, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., the complete thing. Yes, sir. Emilio shot out of the room. Daniela stood there, her smile half hanging. Daniela, yes, boss. The watch. Put it in a bag with gloves. It's going to be sent for forensic analysis. Forensics? Fingerprints? If Mrs. Herrera touched it, she'll have fingerprints. If she didn't, she won't. Simple. Daniela turned pale for the second time in 2 days. Boss, I don't think it's necessary. I do. Very necessary. Put it away. Lucia, standing beside them, said nothing. She just watched. And inside, she felt something new. Respect. No, not just respect for Ricardo Vega, the magnate, the boss, the owner of the building. Respect for the man who, in 2 minutes, had dismantled a trap set by 2 other people. Ricardo straightened up, adjusted his jacket. Mrs. Herrera, I apologize for putting you through this. It wasn't you who made me go through it, boss. The slip of calling him boss escaped without her meaning to. Lucia bit her lip. Ricardo smiled faintly. Let's go to my office, he said. The 2 of us. We have work to do. They left.
Daniela remained alone in the small room with the laptop, the watch, Lucia's emptied backpack, and the smell of her own sweet perfume, which was already starting to turn acrid in her throat. She took out her phone, wrote another message to the unnamed number. Failed. We need a plan B, urgently. On the other end, the number didn't answer for 12 minutes. When it did, it sent a single line. Osaka is coming Thursday. You have 72 hours to clean up the problem. Daniela read the message 3 times. She slipped the phone into her blazer pocket. She left the small room walking very straight, as if nothing had happened. In the elevator, as she descended to the street to smoke a cigarette, she smiled to herself. A new smile. A smile no longer of suspicion, but of decision, of total coldness. 72 hours. Enough time. Up on the 40th floor, in the boss's office, Ricardo Vega opened a thick black leather folder on his desk. Lucia sat opposite him. She was still wearing her uniform, the broom still leaning against the hallway wall. The morning sun streamed through the window, hitting her from the side, illuminating the silver streaks in Lucia's temples, which at 48 she no longer dyed because she had lost the desire to desire. Mrs. Herrera, this is the complete Tanaka project file. 5 years of negotiation, 84 documents, contracts, addendums, emails, memos, everything. I need you to review it from the first paper to the last and tell me where else there's a trap. How much time do I have? 3 days. The Japanese are coming on Thursday. If we sign clean. If not, we cancel and we'll see. But I will not sign a fraudulent contract. Not again. Lucia opened the first page. Her fingers, still smelling of bathroom cleaner, rested on the paper with a strange softness. She began to read. Ricardo left the office and told the assistant that no one was to interrupt Mrs. Herrera, that she was to be brought food on time, coffee whenever she asked, that she should feel at home. Lucia read for 4 straight hours, without getting up, without eating, with a small notebook beside her where she jotted down in tight handwriting, in 3 columns, things in Japanese, English, and Spanish. Ricardo's office was large, with high ceilings, a dark wood library filled with books on commercial law, a black leather armchair in the back, and on the east wall a large oil painting that Lucia looked at several times. It was a portrait of a young, dark-haired woman, sitting with a little girl on her lap. The girl had 2 bows in her hair and held a sunflower. Below the painting, on a metal plaque, it read, Elena and Camila, 1999. Lucia looked at them. She asked nothing because it wasn't her business, but in her head, she did the math and decided, without fully deciding, that Ricardo Vega was not the man she had thought he was the first time he had thrown papers at her feet. She returned to the file. The papers crinkled as she turned the pages. It smelled of old ink and leather from the armchair. Outside, the noise of Reforma traffic reached her muffled, as if coming from another world, one where people didn't yet know that inside that glass office, a fraud worth hundreds of millions of pesos was being dismantled. She found the first anomaly after 2 hours. An email from last year in which an external lawyer from the Tanaka firm mentioned an off-the-record internal meeting at Vega Corp. The email had no reply. It was archived. No one had read it. She found the second anomaly after 3 hours, an addendum to the original contract signed 8 months ago, which added a clause on patent transfer. The addendum was signed by Ricardo Vega, but comparing the signature with Ricardo's previous signatures on other documents, Lucia saw it wasn't the same. It was imitated. Well imitated, but not the same. She found the third at 4 hours, and this one was the biggest. A list. A list of 13 offshore bank accounts in Panama and the Bahamas, hidden in an annex called Secondary Operational Expenses. Regular monthly deposits originating from a shell company based in Yokohama. The company was called Kuroikawa Holdings. In Japanese, Kuroikawa means Black River. And in each of the deposits, in the concept field, appeared the same reference. Commission Intermediation, Vega Corp.
Kurokawa Holdings was not an official partner of Tanaka Industries. It was a parallel company, a hidden channel, and it had been paying commissions to someone within Ricardo Vega's organization for 3 years. Commissions that totaled, according to the calculator Lucia pulled from the desk drawer, 48 million pesos. Lucia leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, breathed. Someone within Vega Corporation had been selling confidential information to Japanese intermediaries for 3 years. Someone who had delegated signature authority from Mr. Vega. Someone who could imitate his signature or have it imitated. Someone who had prepared the 23-page fraudulent contract to sink Vega Corp definitively and keep the biggest commission of the entire operation. Only one person in the entire company had that combination of access, authority, and knowledge. Daniela Cortez. Lucia opened her eyes, looked out the window. The sun was setting behind the Reforma towers. 7 hours had passed without her noticing. She stood up, stretched, walked to the window, looked at the city below, tiny, moving like an old clockwork machine. Her cell phone vibrated in the pocket of her apron. A message, unknown number. She opened it. It was a photo of the door to her house in Iztapalapa, taken that same afternoon. The green gate she herself had painted 2 years ago was visible. The pot of geraniums by the entrance was visible. Next to the pot, a small, dark object that took Lucia 2 seconds to identify. A bullet. A 9mm bullet, standing on its tip, pressed against the fence. Below the photo, a single message. The next one won't stay still. Resign today. Last chance. Lucia stared at the message. She didn't breathe. She didn't blink. Inside her chest, instead of fear, she felt something else. She felt the pulse again. That old pulse. That alive pulse. That pulse of a woman who no longer fears losing because she has already lost. She put away her phone. She returned to the desk, opened her notebook, and wrote 3 firm words at the top of the page. Kurikawa Holdings. Below them, 2 more. Daniela fell. Ricardo Vega entered his office at 9 p.m., 2 cups of coffee in his hands, his tie hanging from his neck like a tired snake. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from 12 hours spent reading papers under a harsh white light. He placed 1 cup in front of Lucia, the other on the large desk in his own office. He sat down, rubbed his face. "All right, Mrs. Herrera, tell me." Lucia closed her notebook. It was already half filled. She folded her hands on the table. She began. "Someone within your company has been selling it for 3 years, Mr. Vega. Someone confirms it, a delegate. Someone who can add amendments to the original contract and pass them off as signed by you. Someone who opened 13 offshore accounts in the name of a shell company in Yokohama. It's called Kuroikawa Holdings, Black River in Japanese. In 3 years, that account has received 48 million pesos. All with the same description, Vega Corp brokerage commission." Ricardo picked up his cup, took a sip. He stared at its rim. "Who is it?" "I have a name, but I don't have the final proof. The proof is in the signatures on the offshore accounts. If I get those signatures and compare them to this person's, we'll have the name." Lucia hesitated for 2 seconds. Daniela Cortez. Ricardo closed his eyes, kept them shut for 15 seconds. When he opened them, there was no surprise, only weariness, something older than anger. There was the exhaustion of men who realized too late that they trusted the wrong person. 12 years working with me, he said. 12 years. "I know, sir. I brought her from a small firm. I paid for her master's degree at Harvard, gave her shares, invited her to my daughter's wedding." He stood up, walked to the window, leaned against the glass with his hands flat. Outside, the city lights stretched to the horizon, like broken rosary beads. "She called my daughter Aunt," he said very softly. "She called her Aunt Danny." Lucia said nothing. Ricardo stood by the window for another minute, then turned around. The weariness was gone from his face, replaced by something else. The look of a man who, in that instant, decides to cut off the hand that's biting him,
even if it hurts, even if it bleeds, even if the entire arm goes numb for weeks. How do I get the signatures from the offshore accounts? I have a friend, a former colleague from the foreign ministry, now working for a firm that does international due diligence in Panama, Bahamas, Virgin Islands. I'll call him tomorrow morning with a power of attorney for you to sign. In 3 days, I'll have certified copies of all the signatures from all those accounts. The Japanese arrive on Thursday. We have until Wednesday at 11 p.m., Ricardo looked at her. He smiled from the corner of his mouth.
A brief, exhausted, but genuine smile. Mrs. Herrera, tell me.
20 years ago, I got too clever. I bought a bankrupt auto parts company. I turned it around. No one believed in the business. All my partners withdrew. I was left alone with the credit and the debts. In 3 years, I revived the factory. In 5, I had 2. In 10, I had 3. And this building. I've negotiated with the Japanese, the Germans, the Koreans, the Italians. I've signed contracts worth billions of pesos. And today, for the first time in 20 years, someone with a broom in her hand has just saved my life. I didn't save anything, sir. Yes, you did. You know what? I'm going to ask you for one thing, and I want you to say yes. Not as my boss, not as a magnate, but as a person. Say it. Don't leave me alone in this. The next 3 days are mine and yours. I don't trust anyone else in this building besides Emilio.
And Emilio is 28 and still gets nervous when he talks to the Japanese.
I need you.
Lucia remained silent. She looked at the painting on the wall, Elena and Camilla, 1999. She looked at Ricardo. She looked at the steaming cup of coffee on the desk. Inside her chest, something stirred, something old, something buried, something she thought she had left behind on a wet highway 16 years ago. She remembered, suddenly, unintentionally, the last day she had worked as an interpreter. It was an OECD summit in Guadalajara. She closed the microphone at the end of her shift, took off her headphones, and walked into the hallway. Andres was waiting for her with Sofia in his arms. Sofia was wearing a little yellow dress. She extended her arms and said, "Mommy, is work over?" And Lucia said, "Yes, my love, it's over." She never knew it was literal. Now, 16 years later, a steaming cup of coffee in front of her, and a tiny voice inside said, perhaps it hadn't ended. Perhaps it had merely paused. "Mr. Vega, tell me. I don't trust you either." Silence. Ricardo raised his eyebrows. Then he laughed. He laughed without enthusiasm, with half his mouth, with that tired laugh of men whom life has taught that another's honesty is worth more than another's respect. "It's fair," he said. "Yesterday you threw papers on the floor. You humiliated me in front of 12 people. I'm not a dog who only remembers the last caress. I remember the first kick, too." "I know. I will help you for 3 days because Daniela Cortez's fraud doesn't just harm you. It harms the 300 employees who work in your 3 factories. It harms the families of those employees and their families' families. I'm not helping Ricardo Vega. I'm helping Vega Corporation. Do you understand?" "Perfectly. After the 3 days, I go back to my job, my mop, my bucket." You let me clean in peace, without offers, without invitations, without my own office. I buried that life long ago, and you don't disturb the dead. Ricardo nodded slowly. "As you wish, Mrs. Herrera. And one more thing. Tell me, if we get to Thursday and we bring down Daniela and save the contract and everything ends well, you're not going to thank me with a check? I don't accept thank you checks. Thank you checks are the richest people's most expensive way to buy their conscience. And I don't sell other people's consciences. Understood? A handshake is enough for me. A handshake." Ricardo extended his hand across the desk, large, dark, with a signet ring gleaming on his pinky finger. Lucia looked at it for a second, then extended hers, small, tired, with short nails and knuckles slightly swollen from scrubbing. They clasped firmly. Neither let go first, neither let go second, as if they had secretly counted the seconds. Lucia stood up, gathered her notebook, took her coffee cup. "I'm going home.
My chauffeur will take you. No, sir. Mrs. Herrera, you just received a photo of a bullet at your front door. This is not a discussion. My chauffeur will take you, and outside your house tonight there will be 2 men. Not to guard you, but to make sure no one else approaches you. Tomorrow morning, he'll bring you back. Lucia looked at him. She was about to say no. She swallowed it. She nodded slowly. Thank you. She went down to the lobby. She was put into an armored van, a silent chauffeur, a man in the back. An hour of traffic to Iztapalapa. When the chauffeur arrived, he got out first. He checked the street. Nothing. Lucia got out, walked to the green fence. She bent down. The bullet was gone, removed. In its place was a small bouquet of white flowers tied with a ribbon. Lucia looked at the chauffeur. I didn't put them there, ma'am. She nodded, inserted her key, and entered. Her house was small, 2 bedrooms, with a shiny white tile floor that she scrubbed every 3rd day. It smelled of tuberose and soap. In the living room, there was a table with photos. Andres, Sofia, her parents, and herself in Kyoto at 20, wearing a blue yukata, laughing at something she no longer remembered. She turned on the light, took off her shoes, went to the kitchen, heated up beans from a Tupperware, ate alone, sitting at the table. She put grated cheese on the beans, half of a morning roll, a glass of hibiscus water she had made the day before. She ate slowly, chewed each bite, and for the first time in 16 years, she ate thinking of something other than the past. She thought of Kuroikawa Holdings, of Ricardo's forged signature. She thought of Daniela Cortez and her red lipstick. She thought of Thursday. Across the table, her gaze drifted to the old photo, now yellowed at the edges, of Doña Remedios, her mother, sitting on the stairs of the house in Coyoacán, wearing a white apron and a blue rebozo. Doña Remedios had cleaned other people's houses for 42 years. She had never gone to school beyond the 4th grade. But when Lucia's translation diploma was placed in her hands that afternoon in Kyoto, where Lucia had graduated and mailed it to her, Doña Remedios had kissed the paper and kept it wrapped in an embroidered handkerchief. Without realizing it, Lucia got up from the table. She walked to the back bedroom. She opened her mother's old wooden trunk, which she hadn't opened in 16 years. She took out the diploma, dusted it off, and placed it on the dining room table, propped against the salt shaker, facing the entrance door. As if Doña Remedios, 16 years after her death, had come to keep her company the night before the biggest fight of her life. She finished the beans, washed the plate, took a shower, went to bed, and for the first time in 16 years, she didn't pray to the Virgin to let her die in her sleep. She prayed for her to let her wake up. At 6:30 a.m., when the chauffeur softly honked to pick her up, Lucia was already ready. Her uniform was ironed, her backpack slung over her shoulder, her notebook under her arm. In the kitchen, on the table, she had left a piece of bread with a yellow post-it note attached. The post-it read in tight, firm handwriting, Andres, Sofia, forgive me for not praying for you today. I have work today. I love you. She closed the door, got into the van, and on the other side of the city, in a 20th floor apartment in Polanco, Daniela Cortez was ending an international call with a certain Kenji Nakamura, a silent partner in Kuroikawa Holdings, saying the last sentence of the conversation. On Thursday, Kenji, you land on Thursday and we sign on Thursday.
The mop lady won't live to see Friday. Thursday dawned without sun. The sky over Mexico City was painted the color of wet ash, with low clouds hanging from the Reforma towers like sheets on a clothesline. At 7 a.m., a Japan Airlines plane landed in Toluca with 6 distinguished passengers aboard. Hiroshi Tanaka, president of Tanaka Industries, his son Kenta Tanaka, executive vice president, 3 board directors, and a corporate lawyer named Kenji Nakamura. Nakamura was a short 52-year-old man with round, gold-rimmed glasses and a navy blue suit tailored in Milan. He carried a black leather briefcase with the initials KN engraved in gold. And in the inner pocket of his jacket, he carried the cell phone with which he had received Daniela Cortez's final instructions from across the ocean the previous night. The previous 3 days had been a race for Lucia and Ricardo. Wednesday at 11 p.m. Precisely within the promised deadline, a manila envelope arrived by courier with certified copies of 13 signatures. The signatures registered on 13 offshore accounts of Kuroikawa Holdings. 12 of the signatures were from the same hand, small, tight, with a curved D and a flourish that ended in 3 staggered dots. An unmistakable signature. The signature Ricardo Vega had seen thousands of times in internal reports, memos, printed emails, Christmas cards, birthday cards. It was Daniela Cortez's signature. The 13th smallest signature, with a Japanese stroke, was Kenji Nakamura's. The other 2 working days had been inside the 40th floor, a strange silence. Daniela went back and forth through the corridors with that fixed smile, that smile that was no longer a smile, but a stiff muscle. Every time she crossed paths with Lucia in the hallway, she would say, "Good morning, Mrs. Herrera." With that voice like poisoned honey, Lucia would reply, "Good morning, Mrs. Cortez," with the usual calm. Neither of them lowered their gaze. Each knew what the other knew. Each waited for Thursday like one waits for the referee's whistle in a 100-meter race. On Tuesday, Lucia had returned home in the armored van, and at her doorstep, again, there was no bullet, but a bouquet of white tuberose. The boys Ricardo had stationed as guards told her that a man had passed by at 3 p.m. on a motorcycle, had stopped for 3 seconds in front of the gate, and had left. He wasn't wearing a helmet, his face had been visible, they had it memorized. On Wednesday, Lucia had asked for one more thing, just one. She had asked Ricardo to send flowers to Camilla in the painting, that young woman with the child, from a different shop, a bouquet of sunflowers with no sender. Ricardo had looked at her and hadn't asked why, only nodded. "We have them both," Ricardo said, looking at the papers at 1 a.m. on Thursday. "We have them," Lucia said, "but we have to tie them up in front of the Japanese, in front of Don Hiroshi Tanaka himself, because if we tie them up sooner, Daniela will manage to warn them. They'll move the money from the accounts, and there'll be no trace. So, we wait until the meeting. We wait until the meeting, and if the meeting gets out of control, it won't. How do you know? Because I'll be there. And because Don Hiroshi Tanaka has been doing business in Mexico for 30 years and cannot tolerate 2 things, dishonor and tardiness. Nakamura and Daniela will fail him on both today." Ricardo looked at her. "Mrs. Herrera, tell me. This scares me." "Me too. And why are we doing this? Because when someone scatters papers on the floor, you pick them up with both hands and lift your head at the same time, never one without the other." Ricardo laughed, a low, hoarse, tired laugh. His father had taught him that. "My father taught me that." I wish I had known him. If there were a branch of Vega Corp in Asia, Europe, and Oceania, given that Clause 23 establishes that in case of discrepancy the Japanese version prevails, this clause as currently worded would cause Vega Corp an estimated cumulative loss of 100 million pesos over a 7-year cycle. Silence. Hiroshi Tanaka turned to look at Kenji Nakamura very slowly. Kenji Nakamura didn't meet his gaze. "Nakamura-kun." Hiroshi Tanaka's voice sounded cold, sharp, as if cutting paper. "Kono joko are ga kaita?" Mr. Tanaka asked Nakamura. "Who drafted that clause?" Lucia translated. Nakamura replied in hurried Japanese, "Wakarimasen, Tanaka-san. Corporeto no chimu ga." Nakamura replied that he didn't know. It was the corporate team. Hiroshi Tanaka was silent for 2 seconds. Then he said without looking at anyone but Nakamura, "Uso da." Lucia translated with a very calm voice. Mr. Tanaka has just told Nakamura in direct Japanese, "That's a lie." Nakamura turned pale. Observation number 2, Lucia continued without pause. On page 16, Annex B, a commercial intermediary is listed. Kuroikawa Holdings, based in Yokohama, which will receive a commission of 8% on the gross contract value. That commission amounts to 38,400,000. Kuroikawa Holdings does not appear as an official business partner of Tanaka Industries in any public Japanese corporate database. I ask Mr. Tanaka, does Tanaka Industries recognize Kuroikawa Holdings as a legitimate intermediary? Hiroshi Tanaka replied, without hesitation, without looking at anyone. No. Mr. Tanaka has just answered no. Nakamura picked up his glass of water and drank. The glass trembled as he set it down on the table. A dry click sounded against the glass. Ricardo Vega hadn't moved in 5 full minutes. Not once. Not his hands, not his head, only his eyes. And his eyes were fixed on the nape of Daniela Cortez's neck, seated 2 seats to his right. Inside his chest, Ricardo felt something new. Not rage, not betrayal. He felt the strange calm of someone who has already cried in the kitchen of their home at 3 a.m., alone with a photograph in hand, and has no tears left. He had cried, yes. Last night, when he finished reading the last pages of the file, he had gotten up from his office chair and gone home, poured himself a tequila, and cried sitting at the kitchen table, looking at a photo of Daniela at Camila's wedding, holding Camila's arm, smiling with bright red lipstick. 12 years. 12 years of treating her like a younger daughter. 12 years of inviting her to Christmas. 12 years of paying for her flights, school, insurance, house. 12 years. And there sat Daniela at the table, sweat trickling from her hair, without looking at him, already knowing that he knew. Observation number 3, said Lucia with the same calm voice. Addendum signed on November 14th of last year, incorporated into the contract as a signed annex, according to the document, by Mr. Ricardo Vega. However, the signature does not match the signatures of Mr. Vega present in the other 22 documents in this same file. It is an imitated signature. With Mr. Vega's permission, I submit for your consideration a preliminary graphological expert report commissioned yesterday from an expert certified by the TSJ of Mexico City. Attached. He took an envelope from his folder and passed it to Ricardo. Ricardo opened it. He read it, passed it to Hiroshi Tanaka. Hiroshi Tanaka read it. He closed the envelope. Herrera-san, he said in Spanish. Who imitated Mr. Vega's signature? The same person who opened the 13 offshore accounts of Kurokawa Holdings in Panama and the Bahamas. The same person who has received 48 million pesos in commissions over the last 3 years. The same person who sent Mr. Nakamura a message the day before yesterday, asking him to eliminate me before Friday. Complete silence. Daniela Cortez stood up from her chair. This is an infamy, she said, her voice trembling. Boss, I've been working for you for 12 years. 12 years! And this woman who appeared 5 months ago with a mop? Sit down, Mrs. Cortez, Ricardo said, without turning around. Boss, sit down. Daniela sat down. Her hands were visibly trembling. The red lipstick on her mouth had become twisted. Lucia took the final package from the folder. 13 pages, 13 certified signatures. She placed them on the table, one by one, calmly, like someone dealing cards from a deck. 12 signatures identical to Daniela's, 1 signature identical to Nakamura's. With Mr. Vega's permission, Lucia said, these 13 signatures are the signatures registered before a notary in the 13 offshore accounts of Kurokawa Holdings. We obtained them through an international law firm yesterday. 12 are signed by Mrs. Daniela Cortez, 1 by Mr. Kenji Nakamura. Hiroshi Tanaka looked at the pages, looked at them one by one. Then he looked up and looked at Nakamura. He spoke in Japanese in a very low voice, sharp as a knife. Nakamura, watashi no kaisha o utadana. Lucia translated very softly. Mr. Tanaka has just told Nakamura, you sold my company. Nakamura lowered his head, said nothing. His shoulder began to tremble. Hiroshi Tanaka stood up very slowly, with the dignity of a man who has been in business for 50 years and has never, in 50 years, been humiliated at his own table. He adjusted his jacket, looked Ricardo Vega directly in the eyes. Vega-san, he said in Spanish, I offer my formal apologies on behalf of my company for what has happened. Nakamura is dismissed this instant. Our lawyers in Tokyo will open a criminal investigation against Kurokawa Holdings today. The addendum from November is annulled. Clause 14 will be rewritten on fair terms, with 50% shared intellectual property, without forced transfer. If Vegacorp agrees to continue negotiations under these terms, we will sign it today. If Vegacorp decides to cancel, I will understand and respect the decision. Ricardo stood up very slowly, very straight, in his perfect black suit and dark gray tie, and the gold tie clip that gleamed in the light of the cloudy midday. He looked at Hiroshi Tanaka. Tanaka-san?